So, using Shrinky Dinks in class for either jewelry or making keychains, the Shrinky Dink paper that I have is about 5.5 inches by 7.5. I honestly don't remember. Let's measure it. 5 3/4 by 7 7/8. So there's two sides to the Shrinky Dink. It is glossy on one side and matte, kind of rough on the other side. Okay. When you are creating your Shrinky Dinks, you want to color on this rough side. If you color on the other side, especially with paint pen, it will probably peel off. You can use colored pencils, paint pens, Sharpie permanent markers. You can use the alcohol markers, they just don't cover quite as well. So whatever design you're using, things to think about. You want to make sure that you're using most of the sheet. If you are not, make sure that you keep your designs on the edges, okay? If you are tracing something, you can put it underneath, right? What you're going to do is make sure you leave enough space to punch a hole so that it is not too close here, not too close here, okay? You want to leave enough space so that when you do punch a hole and this thing shrinks, you have enough space here that it's not going to break. Oops, sorry. That it's not going to break when you put either on an earring or a keychain when you put a jump ring through it, okay? Basically, think about your piece is going to be shown on this side. Even if you're doing earrings, the shiny side is what everybody's going to see. I do have spray paint to make the other side shiny. I'll talk about that in a minute, okay? So when you're working, what you can do, if I wanted to create this little dragon, what I would do is trace my design, and I'm just using Sharpie permanent marker. It's not Sharpie, but it's permanent marker. Okay, so I'm doing all of my details first. Then if I wanted to use paint pen over this to color it in, the details will show. And then you can just color the whole thing. So think about kind of what do you want to see first, draw that or color it first, then you can color over the whole thing, okay? I'll show you guys what this looks like when it's done. I could use the black paint pen to do this, but I wanted to try Sharpie on paint pen, so we'll see how that works out. Other things to think about when you are creating. So if I cut this out, right, I'm gonna cut it out a little bit away from the drawing into a square. I am not gonna try and cut out all these little details, because what that does is create super sharp areas. And what happens with those super sharp areas when this shrinks down is it becomes even sharper. So doing details like suns or flowers, think about keeping your edges rounded or making it a basic shape. If I was going to keep this as a keychain, I would probably just cut it out as a square, okay? If I was doing it maybe as a pendant, I might hole punch up here and then cut an oval around it. Those are things that you need to think about when you are creating pendants, earrings, all of those types of things. If you make a mistake, even with permanent marker, just blend it in and maybe make the other side look the same, okay? Just because you make one little mistake does not mean that this whole thing is trash. Okay. Like I said, I am doing all my details first, and then I'm going to color it with white paint pen over the whole thing. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. I do need to see sketches, or you can copy and paste some things onto a Google Doc and share it with me for you to trace. Okay, if you were coming up with your own design, or if you were doing words, what you need to do to make sure that those words read the correct way on the shiny side is actually draw it backwards on the back side when you're coloring it. Okay, and I will show you some ways to do that. I'll color this in here in a minute. So, for example, if I wanted to do this as a keychain, but I wanted to make sure that my name is the correct way on the other side, a couple of ways you can do this. If you're drawing on lighter paper, you can always put it on the light box and then trace the other side. Okay. You can use printer paper or thinner paper to trace around it using a marker, as long as you can see through it. I'm not going to draw the volleyball. I do have a whole packet on graffiti letters. If you guys want to use graffiti letters, just let me know. So what I would do is continue tracing this with a marker. Probably going to bleed through. That was kind of what I'm hoping on. If it doesn't bleed through, what I can do is just flip this over. And trace the other side so it's black. Okay, so it bled through. Ta-da! So then what I'll do is I will take my Shrinky Dink. I want to try and make sure that I keep things, leave enough space. There should be enough space between those two to create a little keychain out of the dragon, and then a keychain that says chase. So again, I'm just going to use the Sharpie marker to trace over this, and I'll show you what it looks like once I flip it over. Since I didn't do the volleyball in there, I'm going to straighten that out and then probably put that right there. Add some other things to it. Trace this really quick. Like I said, this is so when you flip this over to the other side, to the shiny side, which is kind of the side that you want to face out, it will be the correct direction. If you're really good and you can write things backwards, you know, that's awesome. If not, this is how you get it to read the correct way on the shiny side. Okay. Once you have your design drawn on there, colored on there, so I'm going to take my white paint pen, if I can figure out where it's at. That's black. There's my white one. Okay, so I already did the details. I don't want the details on the back, so I'm just going to take and start coloring over this. I should probably shake my pen. You can blend colors on here with the paint pens. It does take kind of a quick hand to do it. I will show you guys how to do that in a separate video. If I wanted these to be a different color, say, I don't know, purple, because I like purple, why not? I would color those in first. And then again, continue to go over the whole thing with the white. Let's do the eyes blue, why not? So you kind of need to think about it as like reverse painting. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the paintings on like trying to think, where they paint on glass and they do all the front details first and then the back details. I probably should have used the black paint marker because it's kind of, let's see if that's dry. That's dry. Okay. We're gonna see what this looks like. So I make these mistakes. We're just gonna color over this whole thing. We're gonna learn if the permanent marker actually stays permanent when you're using a paint pen over the whole thing. Let's find out. Oh, it does. So to get rid of kind of some of the maybe coloring in lines and stuff like that, I would do a second coat of this. But see how that purple shows up, that blue shows up, and then you just color white over the whole thing. So that reverse painting thing, I think I am going to use my black. So if you wanted to do like a sunset with palm trees, so I'm going to do that in my C. There's my little palm tree. Do some little that is not a great palm tree, but it's okay. Anyway, and I don't know what else to put, but if I wanted to then let that dry and do like a sunset through the sea, we're gonna let that dry first and then see how it goes. And apparently, oh no, that's just on the wait till things dry before you flip them over. To cut these out, one of the things I would do if you're doing squares, use a ruler and a pencil to draw your lines, and so that you can use the entire thing. You can make multiple things out of one Shrinky Dink. They will shrink down to about 1/4 of the size. So if I cut this there, and let me flip this around so that I can see where I'm drawing my line. There. So this square right here will shrink down to about that size. I do have a whole poster on my wall that kind of shows you different sizes and how far it shrinks down. Let's see if this is dry yet. Yay, it's dry. So if I wanted to do a sunset in my C, I would probably start with red, orange, and yellow. You may not even need the orange, but again, this is that working very quickly to create blends. So I'm going to do that, and then, oops, wrong side. into yellow, or to the orange. I'm going to go back over that orange to blend it out. Okay, same thing kind of into my red. Go very quickly with my red. I haven't actually tried to use acrylic paint on these. I don't know if acrylic paint would work on them. I don't know if it'll crack when it shrinks. That is something I might experiment with. And then you could almost also go over the whole thing with your yellow again. And then if your yellow gets dirty, clean it off on scrap paper, right? Let's see how this looks. When I flip it over. Blend some more with the red. So, kind of blending. I think I went over too much and it pulled some of that black. I don't know if you guys can see that. It pulled some of that black into there, kind of made it a brownie color. So maybe use the permanent marker to do your blacks. And then if you see little areas where you missed, you can go back in with your finer tip. Clean that off. Make sure caps get back on markers. And then when you're cutting these out, follow that line right there. Okay. If you were keeping it as a square keychain, rectangular keychain, any of those types of things, you're going to come see Miss Chase, and you're going to get my corner rounder. You're going to stick the corner in the corner rounder and round those corners. Because again, when these shrink down, you guys, they can get super sharp if you don't do this. I would round the corner before you punch that hole. And then for the hole punch, find my hole punch. You'll take my hole punch it, like I said, leave it about 1/4 inch. Don't put it right on the edge, you guys. This may even be actually too thin. I would probably move that down just a little bit if I was going to make it a pendant and round the corners. So, reminders, color on the rough side. Think about drawing details first, then doing your base color over the whole thing. If you're using white, maybe, because it kind of bled in there. I don't know if I put more white over it, if it'll work, but talk about that later. But do your details first, and then you can color over the whole thing, and you don't have to color around your details. Once they are done, you have them cut out. You're going to get a Ziploc bag. One of my smaller Ziploc bags. This is what you're going to store it in. This is a quart size. Again, you guys are going to make sure that your name is on your Ziploc bag. I can either take these home and shrink them. You can give them to me and I will shrink them. Or I will give you directions to shrink them if you want to take them home. Okay. You do need to turn them in class. If you're using it for a formal project, I do need to see them before you give them to people, right? That is part of your studio work in class. Make sure you put your name on your Ziploc bag, and then pieces go in Ziploc bag, and then I can shrink them at home. That's Shrinky Dink.